the Wednesday Week, the Sheffield Wednesday Fan Podcast.
Right, we'll go. So evening everyone, welcome to the Wednesday Week podcast this week, and for the third week running we've got a special guest on with us. So a couple of weeks ago we had Sean McAllister on, last week of course we had Miguel on, and tonight we've got Craig Armstrong in to speak with us. Round of applause for Craig coming on. So thanks for coming on, mate. As we did last week, we'll go around the squares that we've got. So we've got Vic with us, Fudge, Monty, Stevie and Ash. And I'll hand you over to Vic to start with, because obviously she was the one that managed to get you on. So I'll hand over to Vic with a question to start.
Yeah, obviously, Craig, it's been a lot. Well, it's only been a couple of years now since I've seen you, because you play against the others in Reds. Well, you're sometimes on the red side in Reds versus Blues, but it's good to see you. Obviously, I think you weren't at Wednesday as long as a lot of the other people that we've spoken to, or you were just always on your sick bed, nursing that left foot. So obviously, I'll be quite offensive because I've known you forever, but I'm sure everyone else will be nice to you. But what is the one thing that stood out for you from your time at Wednesday, albeit as infrequent as it was?
You know what? It's a massive club. So I played against Sheffield Wednesday in the Premier League, in the Championship, and then when I moved from Huddersfield after they'd been relegated, I broke my ankle before I actually came and joined in. I think it was the February of 2002. Terry Orth, who was my assistant manager at Huddersfield, brought me in. So coming into a football club with unbelievable history, fantastic fan base, I was excited. I was really looking forward to the challenge. Unbeknown to me, when I came in, I had a few issues with my calves. I had a few underlying problems with some of my muscular tears and things like that I didn't realise hampered me. And it sort of continued a little bit into the season. The season Terry got the sack. But as an overall view of the club, you know, what a massive club. And it was a privilege to play for the club. I just think it was maybe at the wrong time for me.
You scored one goal, though, didn't you, while you were here against Rotherham?
Right foot as well.
Right foot, I know. I couldn't believe that. That threw me completely. Yeah, so anyone else want to chip in?
Yeah. Well, good to join us, Craig. So obviously, like Vic's just mentioned, you scored against Rotherham. Now, for probably all of us here, never get that feeling about scoring for Wednesday. So, I mean, like Vic said, you didn't have the longest of stays or anything, but one goal against quite an important team for us. What's it like, basically scoring for Wednesday? Because not many people get that privilege. So I just thought,
it's good to score any goal is good. I didn't have a prolific goal scoring record. I was more a defender. When I moved to Huddersfield, I ended up moving into centre midfield. Lou McCarry put me into midfield because as a young kid in the youth team at Forest, I either played left back or centre midfield. So Lou put me in midfield. Terry signed me as a midfielder, but when I first joined the club, I went to left back because we had a few injuries. And then obviously Terry, when he tried to put his team together and went three at the back, I was meant to be a holding midfielder, so I would never be prolific. However, scoring a goal, you know, it's always great to score, and to score, I suppose, against, you'd class it as a derby, as in not a great derby because Rotherham aren't a massive club as such, but it's always great to score. Just unfortunate we got beaten the game.
Can I lead into that next question then? Because I've got one that just ties into what Ash has said there, Craig, and it's to do with versatility. Obviously, you've had that ability to play centre and left back and also in the midfield. Wednesday's biggest problem at the moment, I think, is one of our star players in Adam Reach has the same problem with you in terms of he's a versatile player and that helps you to get in the team maybe in the first instance. How do you go about tying down asset plays and making sure that the manager picks you in your preferred position, or do you just have to go with what the team needs?
It's difficult because, I mean, I started off my career playing centre midfield on Sunday football. And then when I moved to Nottingham Forest, I ended up getting pushed to left back. And I ended up starting in the youth team as a left back, came through as a left back. And then my actual debut was as a centre back. Mm-hmm. And I started playing centre back from 22, never played there before. Moved to Huddersfield as a centre back, and then I got moved to left back, and then I got moved to midfield. And what ends up happening is that you become comfortable playing positions, but you never seem to settle. And the difficult thing is, I could be playing really well at centre midfield, and then someone gets injured in a different position. You go and play in that position, and that player comes back, and you end up getting shunted out a little bit, or it has happened in the past where I've ended up losing my place because I might not have had a great game at the position I've gone to fill in on. The person who's come into midfield has been outstanding and done really well, which sometimes you can't warrant that. You can't help that happening.
Yeah.
It's just one of them things. But I think it's great having a lot of strings to your bow, but it can hamper you. I think had I stayed centre back when I moved to centre back at Nottingham Forest, I think I would have had a far better career. But because I got moved around and moved into different positions and ended up playing 20, 25 games centre midfield at Huddersfield, then moving to Wednesday, playing centre midfield, then dropping out when managers change, and it can hamper you. But I suppose what it boils down to is that the manager who brings you in, or the manager you're playing for, if he's brought you in, you're going to play regardless of what position you're playing.
Yeah.
And I think that was what my downfall was. With Taft bringing me in at Wednesday to play centre midfield initially, and I know he could have played me in other positions, and he left me out and could have put me back in. I knew that if I played well, I'd play. But when Chris came in, he made a couple of promises to me that I was going to play, and then picked up an injury, and he said he managed my injury to get through the games to the end of the season. Then he changed his mind on that, and then the season after, I came in and I had 2 years left on my contract, and Macca, Paul McLaren, Quinny, all them had 1 year left, and I think Dave Allen, unbeknown to me at the time, had told Chris to get me out and try and force me out, because I had obviously he just wanted me out. The fact that instance, so I was never going to play under Chris. And then obviously when Paul Sturrock came in, the same thing happened again. Got pulled into an office and was told straight away, listen, chairman wants you out of the football club. So you were always going to play second fiddle to a manager if you were never brought in by that manager.
Yeah.
So sorry, Dan. Go on.
No, I'm just on the back of that, Craig. So the chairman had an influence in the buying and selling of players. Do you reckon that was a financial decision or something to, did he have a stranglehold? Because it was a bit of a tumultuous time for the club. I had the fortune of meeting Ashley Westwood on a cruise ship I did. And he was saying that he found it very difficult. And he was shocked that I remembered who he was, to be fair. He was, but he was saying that it was quite difficult. The chairman had quite the influence into the club.
Well, I mean, listen, I've met Dave afterwards when Dean Saunders was manager at Chesterfield. I went and had a cup of coffee after a game. Hang on 1 second, out. Thought it was just coming in.
That was the impression of Paul Sturrock when you joined the club.
Yeah, so I met
Dave Allen.
I met Dave after the game at Chesterfield, and we had a conversation. It wasn't about what happened to Sheffield Wednesday, just in general. A really, really nice guy. I think the difficult thing is I'm not an owner of a football club, and you don't know what the finances are. So regardless of what Sheffield Wednesday fans paid on season tickets and television deals, etc., there was still the fallout from obviously Phil O'Donnell and Simon Donnelly and Gerald Sibon, and the amount of money that was muted they were being paid. And me coming into a football club at the time, then getting relegated to League One, I was on nowhere near unbelievable money and that's a fact. I wasn't. But the problem you've got is when you're playing in League One and a new manager comes into a football club, the chairman needs to generate money to get money in. So if he can get me out of the football club in any way he can, then he will do. And that's the difficult thing, that the manager did. If he'd just been honest from day one and said to me, listen, if you can find another club, we'll look at trying to sort a deal out to get you out of the club. Let's see if we can do that. I can talk about that a bit later on. Obviously, I had an opportunity to go to Swansea, but we'll come on to that in a bit. But going back to what you're saying, it's difficult for an owner of a football club, a manager of a football club, to decide on what they're doing, because they're always dictated by a budget. If Chris Turner wants to bring in 3-4 players and he's got Chef Kikuchi picking up 6-10 grand a week and he needs to generate money, he needs to find a buyer or get him off the wage bill, because that 10 grand a week might actually bring in 3-4 players for that cause to get Sheffield Wednesday promoted.
And how did that sort of manifest itself in the changing room day to day then? You know, when you've got lads that are feeling those sorts of situations, when you've got people that are maybe on different sort of wages and, you know, the money's not the same, there's not parity across the group. Did that affect the atmosphere in the changing room?
Well, no, I don't think it did. I just think what you had is when I came into the football club initially, you had, it probably affected a little bit. I remember coming to the dressing room and obviously with Simon Donnelly and Phil O'Donnell being there on big money, Sid was an unbelievable top talent, top player, and should have played. But maybe Terry Orris didn't pick him because if he played, it might have triggered more financial money for him to come on board, appearance money. And I remember being in the dressing room, coming into an argument, I think Quinny had with Sid, saying to Sid, you should be playing. You should be playing. And Sid said, well, listen, at the end of the day, I'm not playing. You know, it's not my choice. It's the manager's choice. You shouldn't let that affect you. And I felt I was not part of that, but because I was brought in by Terry at the time, it makes it a lot difficult, or more difficult for the players who were already there, embedded in the football club, who are really good friends with each other, who've been there 2-3 years, come through the system. You know, Lee Bromby come through the system. Mac had been there 18 months, and Quinny, Dell, all these guys. But they were all great lads. When you're talking about money and being on a par and a parity with salaries, you sign for what you agree. So if I knew someone was at the football club was on 40 grand a week and the club only wanted to pay me £1,000 a week, if I was happy to go for £1,000 a week or £500 a week, that's my choice. I can't then go in there and sit there and go, oh, he's picking up 40 grand a week, he's not even playing. Why am I not on that sort of money? Footballers shouldn't think like that. It's if they're happy, it's how it's done. I think the problem you have now is that the money's gone even more extreme, salaries are more expensive, and what you'll get now is that managers don't have the power as such. Players now, if they want to sit on their contracts and got 2-3 years left on £2 million a year, then contracts are so watertight, you're not going to get that player out regardless.
So do you think, Craig, that, you know, when you were at Hillsborough, the club was sort of on the decline from the Premier League going down into League One? Was that slightly poor team spirit in the change room? Do you think that sort of contributed to the poor form on the pitch?
No, I don't think so, because, you know, going back to that, there wasn't poor team spirit. It was good team spirit within the group. The problem you've got is that when you are relegated from a football club and you're on a decline and you're losing game after game, to try and change that sort of fortune around is very difficult. So me coming in and David Burrows coming in and one or two others aren't going to be the catalyst. It's the guys who are there already. And the problem you've got is that the manager's then going to have to get John Harkes out and people like, not John Harkes, Harkes boy who played for Liverpool, left back.
Steve Harkness.
Steve Harkness. Yeah. Steve has to leave the football club and not allowed to train with the first team, because the problem you've got is that managers will be told, regardless of what they say, that they would treat everyone the same. Managers are told to make funds available, you need to get players out. And that player might be, if it's £2,000 a week or 10 grand a week, if the manager thinks he's capable and good enough for him, or if he thinks he's a player that could potentially bring you some money in, then that's what happens. It's not so much. Listen, we just struggled. We were just, I don't think it helped with Lloyd Owusu coming in and picking up an injury and then struggling to get back fit. Matt Hamshaw was out injured, who was outstanding the season before for in the Championship. I just think there was a lot of different things going on behind the scenes about the club financial problems. There's all sorts going on. You know, so it makes it more difficult.
So we've said a bit about Wednesday. Now you've mentioned already that you started your career at Forest. Well, maybe about 92. So you come through under Cloughie. What was that like?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I joined the club in the 91-92 season. So just after they'd lost the FA Cup final against Spurs, I joined the club so back in the day, so Sean McAllister wouldn't know this because he was too young. But back in the day, you could sign for a club from anywhere in the country, and you could only sign when you were 14-year-old. And I'd been on trial to Man United, I'd been to Arsenal, Now, what had happened is I used to play rugby till I was 11. I never played football, and I remember playing for my school team one game, played for a district side, played against so I played for Durham District, and I played against Chelsea Street District. And straight after the game, I had 7 or 8 clubs ask me to go on trial, and there was a Sunday League side in Chelsea Street called Hilda Park, who was ran by Colin Todd, the ex-England centre-half in Derby and Forest. And Toddy ran the side, but he was assistant manager of Middlesbrough at the time. And they asked me to come and play for their Sunday side. So I just gave up rugby like that. And I wasn't a bad rugby player, and I just gave it up. My dad wasn't happy. Joined Hilda Park as an under-12 season in the Christmas, January time, and sort of didn't look back. Went on trial to Nottingham Forest. And at the time, I was going to Middlesbrough Centre of Excellence as well once I joined Hilda Park. And I remember I'd been down to Forest a few times on trial, and they kept inviting me back, and I'd never met Brian Clough. And you'd see Archie Gemmell around the place, and Liam O'Kane, all these guys who were there anyway. And I remember going for a meeting with Bruce Rioch and Colin Todd at the training ground in Durham. And because I knew Bruce and I knew Colin very well, because I played football with both their sons, I had a meeting with Bruce and said, listen, I know Forest have offered you a contract to come down. Would you like to come to Middlesbrough? We want you to come here. And I said, listen, I need to think about it. And at the time, I hadn't been invited down to meet Brian Clough. So as I was leaving the training ground at at Durham, the training ground for Middlesbrough, Colin Todd followed me out and actually said to me, listen, don't come to Middlesbrough, go and play for Brian Clough. So that was sort of my inspiration for me to say, all right, okay, I'll listen to what you've got to say. So I then decided I'd go down and meet Brian Clough. So I remember going down, I remember the game so vividly. Charlton at home, third, I think it was the last home game of the season. Forest finished third in the top flight, and Des Walker was still there at the time. Won 4-0. And I remember meeting Brian Clough before the game, and he came in, and the first thing he said to me was, so you're the young man signing for me? And I just looked at him and I went, yeah, okay, yeah. And that was how I ended up signing for the club, because he basically just come in and told me, you're signing for me.
I imagine, sorry, Greg, I imagine there's not many people say no to Brian Clough. I mean, I'll put on the spot there as well.
People can, I don't think.
I mean, yeah. So it was interesting. It was, I mean, I still remember the sort of the youth team days quite well, and again, it's sort of a lot of stories around. Brian Clough was from the northeast, so I had a good relationship with him. So I got into the first team squad when I was 17, so a second-year scholar. So I was involved from Christmas up until the end of the season. And I remember we were in the quarterfinals of the FA Youth Cup against Millwall. So that was the same season. I don't know if you guys will remember. I'm sure Victoria won't, because she's too young for this. But it was the season that class of '92. It was when Leeds played Man United at the double in the FA Youth Cup final, and I think Leeds ended up winning. That's when I had Jamie Forrester, Kev Sharp, Mark Tinkler. Well, in the Man United side was obviously Nicky Butt, Paul Scholes, David Beckham, and we played Millwall, and we played Millwall away, and we drew 0-0. And all of a sudden, I wasn't allowed to play for the youth team. I wasn't allowed to play for the reserves. I was meant to be making my debut against Middlesbrough away, and Cloughie changed the side. I think it was literally the 20 minutes before, obviously named the team. Even though I was named in the team the day before, he ended up changing the team. So I sat on the bench, and at the time it was only 2 subs on the bench. So we're talking a long time ago. And I remember being sat in the dressing room at the end of the game, and we had a guy called Ron Fenton, who's Cloughie's assistant manager, and Alan Hill, the goalkeeping coach. And I remember them saying at the end of the game, we won the game 2-1. Steve Stone scored on his debut. And he said to me, at least you got your win bonus. And I went, I don't give a fuck about my win bonus. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to play football, because it was never ever about money when I was that young. It was all about that sort of side of it. Anyway, I kept sitting on a bench for the next 4 or 5 games, and then we played Millwall in the second leg. The replay, and I had an absolute shocking game. I was terrible. I had Mark Kennedy was playing wide right, and I tried to smash him 4 or 5 times in the game. And I just knew he was a danger player. I didn't know who he was, and I tried to smash him, and I kept missing him. Anyway, we were 2-0 up at half time, ended up getting beat 3-2. And I remember coming after the game, and Archie Gemmell hammered me, Liam O'Kane, the youth team coach John Perkins, God rest his soul. They all destroyed me. You're a disgrace. In today's football, they'd get sacked for abuse. It was a disgrace. Anyway, I was never involved in the first team for the next 3-4 weeks. I'd been binned off. No one spoke to me. No one. I was basically like shit on a dog shit on a shoe. I was just treated so badly. And I remember walking past the first team training. We had like two sort of separate we had our own training ground down by the river, and we had another plot called Boots. And the first team were training. I remember Des Walker had come back from Sampdoria. It was in international window. I think he'd been dropped. And I'm walking past him. You know, like your high 6-foot fence, wire mesh you can see through. And all Cloughie was there. And he's going, Armstrong, come here. And I thought, oh shit! Like no one spoke to me. Everyone's ignoring me. Everyone's blanking me. So I've sprinted to obviously where the first team are training. And at the time, you've got obviously Roy Keane's there, Stuart Pearce, Des Walker. I think Neil Webb might come back. Listen, it was a fantastic squad. And he stopped the training in front of the first team, and all the first team had to gather around, and he just stood there and he just said, you ever play like that again, I will fuck you off back to Durham quickly. Now you've come now, fuck off. Right? So I'm thinking, oh my God, I've just had the biggest bollocking ever. So I trundled back up the training ground, the ground, because we used to get changed at the ground, and I'm devastated. I'm absolutely gutted. And I'm doing my jobs. I'm tidying away my job. And it must have been 3:00 in the afternoon. All I heard was, Armstrong, come here. So I'm thinking, oh my God, what now? So walk into his office, and he just said to me, take my dog for a walk. Don't come back for half an hour. I took the dog for a walk. And I just remember, and I'm thinking, I'm looking at my clock. I'm checking my watch and thinking, I can't go back now. I can't go back now. If I go back early, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. So just kept going through my head. I felt lower than a snake's belly. I just felt so terrible. I felt gutted. You know, everyone likes an arm around the shoulder. Everyone likes a pat on the back, and everyone knows when they've played terrible. And I remember bringing the dog back, walked Del Boy back into his office. He says, there you go, Gaffer. There's the dog. He's gone, thank you, son. There you go. There's 20 quid. And I'll see you later. And that was it. After that, I was back in the first team squad, travelling, the bench. Honestly, he just had a knack of making you feel so special after he's just given you the biggest bollocking you've ever had.
I'll tell you what, Craig, when obviously I don't want to talk about the drink issues, but when Brian started to decline as a manager, the game had moved. There was an influx of, you know, you listen to the old school players and they always say the foreigners came in and all the rest of it. But during around that time, there was a change of diet, a change of training, and an entire change of attitude as to what it was to be a professional footballer. Did it become apparent that Brian Clough's methods in the early to mid 90s all of a sudden became a little bit dated and he couldn't, for lack of a better term, pull the same shit?
No, I wouldn't say that, because yes, it was starting to come in drips and drabs, and I think it was more when Frank Clark took over. He brought in a fitness instructor, a fitness guy called Pete. We had a guy come from England to do sort of Pilates with us, and in all honesty, I think he lasted 20 minutes because the lads just weren't having it. So Frank tried to bring in different changes. The thing is, it's what Brian had a really good knack of. He let his coaches coach or do the training, and he'd just turn up on a match day, pull the football out on a skip. He used to have this football he took everywhere, put on a towel in front of you, and he wouldn't say a word until we're about to go out for kick-off. He says, see the ball. When you haven't got the ball, get the ball back, and when you've got it, keep it. That type of thing. That was as genius as he was, as simple as it was. Centre-halves head it. Strikers get a hold of the football. Full-back stop crosses. Wide players put crosses in the box. It was as simple as that. And goalkeepers catch it. That's it. That was as simple as it could get from Brian Clough, and it worked. I just think that the season we got relegated, I mean, listen, I didn't know he had a drink problem, and that's a fact. And I mean, this is how daft it is. We didn't even know. Every home game, there'd be a pair of blue tracksuit bottoms, a red jersey and a green jumper hung up on a hanger where the goalkeeper sat. And there was always a bath ran. Always I used to think it was a hot bath until you checked it was freezing cold. What Brian used to do is he used to come in, jump in the bath before when all the lads were out warming up, and then he'd get out the bath and get changed, and he was right as rain. You didn't know that. I think I only ever saw him once where he might have been intoxicated, but you just didn't know. I didn't have a clue. And maybe it was just naivety or just not recognising the signs. It was just that you only saw him sometimes on a Saturday. During the week, you'd see the dog come into the training ground, and 10 minutes later, he'd walk behind the dog and he'd shout into the training ground to your team coach, "John, they've done enough, get them in." We hadn't even started training. We just finished putting goals out for the first team. He just had a knack of sort of doing magical things without even thinking about it. I just think that wasn't so much him coming to an end of an era. I just think it was the players at the time just weren't good enough, or we weren't good enough as a club, and it was just that sort of spiral to come back down and restart again, or it was just the leagues were getting tougher, or people or clubs were bringing better players in. I don't know. It's a hard question, that, because I didn't realise how important fitness was until I played for Lou Macari.
We'll stay on Forest theme just a bit, because it all started getting quite chaotic towards, I think, the end of your time at Forest with Pierre Van Hooijdonk going on strike and stuff like that. What were all that like being at Forest?
So Harry Bassett, so Stuart Pearce took over from Frank Clark, and when Frank went to Man City as a caretaker, and Harry came in as sort of sporting director and was always going to get the manager's job because Pearce was going to move on. So when we got relegated, obviously we'd already signed Pierre from Celtic. When we got relegated, everything was fine during the season. I was involved in around the first team. I was always on the bench. I was always playing. But the season, because we won and got promoted straight away, I think if you ever look back over some of Harry's sort of interviews, he talks about Pierre quite vividly and how much he despised what he did. Pierre was a great player and actually a really good guy. I think the disappointing thing for me was that if Pierre hadn't gone on strike, if Kev Campbell hadn't been sold and Scott Gemmell wasn't allowed to play and other players had been sold, Colin Cooper to Middlesbrough, I wouldn't have started the season. But I would have been more happy not starting the season, being a bit part player, still learning my trade, still being around good, top quality players in Kev and Pierre and Colin Cooper, because we would have stayed in the Premier League, because we would have had a really good squad. And I would have been happy coming on and starting in the odd game and being part of that squad to build on. What happened is Pierre wasn't happy that we hadn't made any signings. I think he wanted to sign Wim Jonk. He was pushing for Wim Jonk. Yeah, well, he was pushing to bring Wim Jonk in because he played with obviously Wim with the Dutch squad, and he wanted other players in. I think the straw that brought the camels back was that Kev Campbell was meant to sign a contract on, I think, the week before the season started, and there was a clause in his contract, and they kept messing around with his contract. They were going to take it out, and then eventually they were going to take it out, and then they had a phone call to get on a plane and fly to Turkey. So he then gets sold, and I think Kev talks about in a few podcasts about how Pierre rang him and said, "Kev, what are you doing? Where are you?" "I'm in Turkey. I'm about to sign." "Well, if you're signing, I'm going on strike." Now, I remember having not a conversation with Pierre. I had a conversation with Pierre afterwards, I think, when I bumped into him in the city centre. Had a bite to eat with him or sat down and had a beer with him, and I just remember saying, Pierre, I was just more disappointed because if you want to leave, you should have just come back and just put a transfer request in, because we needed you. You playing at 50% would have been better than you not playing at all. And I think that was the most disappointing thing about it. It upset the camp and the group, and we had to fight for ourselves and fend for ourselves, and it became a really tough season because of it. And then obviously when he did come back, he started scoring goals, and I think it was just too late. I think we lost 55 goals from the championship season of Kevin and Pierre.
Jesus.
So, Craig, talking about enigmatic Dutchmen, a nice segue here to one of our own. Did you play alongside Gerald Sibon when he was at Wednesday?
I did.
And if so, I enjoyed watching him playing growing up, but I was never entirely sure what he was going to do. So as a teammate, how was he to play with? Was he skillful? Was he lucky? Was he Andy Booth's slightly less talented cousin?
You know what? Gerald was a top talent, and I think that again got relegated. Doesn't maybe want to play in the Championship. Wanted to do too much, but the hardest thing was when you're fighting and scrapping in the Championship and you're trying to win football matches, especially when I joined the club, we were at the bottom of the league trying to get out of relegation, which we did eventually. You didn't know what you get from Pierre. You're right. From Gerald. But what Gerald did do is he could score a goal on just in a blink of an eye, and not just a tap in, unbelievable goals. Now the problem you'd have is he'd shoot from 40 yards, 50 yards, and 60 yards. But
the song there.
On his day, he was an unbelievable talent. I just think again it was difficult for him. Maybe he felt, losing the players that were around him when he was playing in the top flight. It can change people's sort of, I don't know, work ethic or just mindset a little bit. And, a 90% Chelsea Bon isn't a 50% Van Hooijdonk.
Right.
It's 90%, you might as well not play. Because if he's playing at 100%, you'll have him up. But if he's playing at 90%, there's no point because you just know what you're going to get. Then you're playing 10 against 11.
Is that quite a common thing, Craig, with footballers? Is like if they're not on the game and not everyone has 100%, but like you get a 80%, 90%, that that they're lost. Like you just said about Gerald. If you knew he's not 100%, you might as well have 10 men. Is that quite a common thing with footballers? Do they know each?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think the difficult thing is there's a place for a Gerald Sibon. There's a place for the maverick footballer, because that's what you class him, where you ask him to play in a position, he comes and gets the ball off the goalkeeper when he's playing up front. Strikers don't do that. If you've got a team of... So I played under Keith Downing, who had an unbelievable career at Wolves and Birmingham, and top coach. I think he's England under 19s manager or 20s manager. What Keith used to do is Keith used to always talk about everyone plays poorly. Everyone has bad games. Those at Wednesday will know me more than any. But what I'm trying to say is that everyone has bad games. It's about if you play within a team structure, and a team shape, and a team understanding, then you could still, at 80%, still do a job for the team. Nothing stops you running around. Nothing stops you working hard. Just because a striker doesn't hold the ball up or doesn't score a goal doesn't mean that he's not trying. If he's working his socks off and running around a football pitch like a Jamie Vardy does, then Christ almighty, it doesn't matter whether you've got 2 or 3 players missing. What you've got is he's got people working and willing to run around. Then you scrap out a 0-0. I think what ends up happening is if you don't have enough of them in the side, that's when you start to struggle.
Do you think that comes from the management, though, as well, in terms of knowing how to manage the characters that you've got in the team, in the sense that you know that if you deal with a Sibon and you put your arm around him rather than a kick up the arse, it's going to be a different sort of response from that player?
Yeah, of course it is. Your man management is probably the ultimate thing that makes a top player into a bad player or a bad player into a top player, because I keep going to other managers. John Ward at Cheltenham, I remember coming in after a game and coming at half time at Gillingham away, and he said to me, and I played really well, and I knew I had, and he said, I'm going to give you a bollocking. It's not at you, don't worry about it, not at you. And he gave me this unbelievable bollocking, but it was a sort of roundabout way, having a go at me to have a go at someone else.
Yeah.
And then when we go, and I was one of them, I could take it anyway, so I wasn't that bothered even if it was directed at me. And when everyone walked out, as I'm walking past John, he said to me, you know that wasn't aimed at you. You know who that was aimed at, don't you? I said, yeah. So John was very good at managing people. And I thought, and we did that in League Two, got promoted to League One on a shoestring budget, because he managed the players he had around it, and because he understood the characters that he had, who to give a bollocking to and who to praise and who not to. And when they needed a bollocking, he knew how to do it. And I think Gerald, if you go back to Gerald probably needed telling he was the best player in the world. But sometimes when you tell good players they're the best players in the world, if they're not wholeheartedly at the football club, and I don't know if that's what Gerald was or wasn't, then sometimes you can maybe believe what you've been told and still not want to try. You know, I just think that season I joined the football club, or the season after when we got relegated, it was so difficult because of it was spoke about in the press. The club was struggling financially. They were on about administration. They were on about players can't come in. They were on about cutting the wage budget. There was so many things that were going on outside of football. And then inside of football, you've got players on different money and people who maybe have different agendas because they want to go play elsewhere and play at different football clubs and try and progress their career, which I think Gerald did go and do. You know, so it just depends on I suppose the time and the moment and where you are.
Okay. Now, Craig.
Yeah.
Fan questions. Like I say, it's always a bloody nightmare. My apologies in advance. Of course, I've not written these. Who's more mental, Leon Knight or Chef Kikuchi?
Mentally strong.
No, just mental,
Nice,
just
Greg.
absolute.
I'm
Mad as a fish in petrol.
mentally strong, Shefky. Mentally silly, Leon.
So Leon. All right. Who's your favourite member of Take That?
It's what the fans want to know, isn't it, Dan?
And that's from Daniel in Southampton. I'll just put Gary. All right. What was your best night out in Sheffield? Where did you used to go when you were in Sheffield? You know, it's nearly 20 years ago now, but you know what I mean.
Do you know what? Everywhere it was good. It was such a good night. Great city.
Oh, you know what you're going to say. It was always Republic on a Saturday night. Don't lie, Craig.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Republic.
I'll just put Revolution.
And then when I was, and then to be fair, when I was binned off, hang on. Then when I was binned off from Chris Turner, I think Republic was my best night on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
I tell you what, Craig, you'd have been in your late 20s then, and you're at the student nights on a Tuesday. Fair play, pal. Fair play.
You could always find them in the same spot.
We've always.
It was like one spot where you knew Craig and Billy.
Right. Hang on. Mentally on night. Right. This one's a good one. This one.
Go on, then.
Who would win in a fight, Lee Bradbury or Grant Holt?
Oh, do you know what?
That's a tasty affair, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There'd be some slugs there, wouldn't there?
At the time, probably Bradbury, but you know, I've seen Grant quite a few times of late, and I think Grant would probably win it now.
He does his wrestling.
His wrestling.
Yeah. So
banging to his wrestling.
2001, Lee Bradbury, and 2020, Grant Holt. All right, last one. Now, I think from Wikipedia telling me, could be wrong because I can't count wrong because I only skim counted it. 18 clubs I think you played for, with obviously the majority of it being at Nottingham Forest, with the exception of Brian Clough, because you know I'll give you that. Who was one of the best gaffers you played for?
I hate to say this, guys, but Dave Bassett. In the live stream now. Do you know what? Harry, right? Harry was the ultimate best man manager I have ever played for in my life. He is unbelievably top draw. And if you speak to anyone else who's played for him or played under him at any club, they'll tell you the same. He made everyone who wasn't involved in the team feel part of the team. He just knew how to get the best out of people. And I think, you know, if he'd stayed at Nottingham Forest and he knew the writing was on the wall and the way they treated him, didn't give him any money, and I think he would have kept the club up if he'd been given a bit of money and a bit of backing. But just sorry to do that, guys. I know it's a bit dirty.
Well, going on to a different manager that you've, I think you played under, it's Steve Bruce that took you to Huddersfield.
No, it wasn't. It was Kenny Jackett.
Right.
That's good.
Steve Bruce.
Yeah, so Steve came in. So Peter Jackson brought me in. In again February 2000, February 99, and Steve joined. They sacked him because Barry Ruby had took over, and sacked him and brought in Steve to be sort of this person to bring loads and loads of players in. So yeah, You know, listen, Steve was. I didn't see eye to eye with Steve all the time. I found it difficult with him. He knew me from when I played left back. So when he first came in, he put me straight to left back, which I didn't want to play because I didn't enjoy it. And I'd had success at Forest at centre half and success when I first joined Huddersfield at centre half. And he then brought in Ken Moncow and Chris Lecketty from Bury at the time. So I was always going to play left back for a short period. So it was brilliant where you're not going to play centre half. If you want to play centre half for me, you're going to have to bide your time. And then after Christmas, I get into centre half and he doesn't drop me. He doesn't leave me out. And it's one of them where now you're my best centre half. So he was good. I learned more from Steve, from how he treated me, because I didn't feel he treated me very well at times. But I learned a hell of a lot from him. And I can see why he's been more successful now than probably when he was younger, if that makes sense.
I mean, it's a bit of more of a dirty word than Bassett round here at the moment.
Yeah. Didn't treat us very well either. I think we're all.
I think it's the hardest thing, isn't it? Because he came in and did really well, didn't he? And he started off and he was flying, and I think he was turning the tide and changing things around and how things look. And that must be the hardest thing when you're a Newcastle fan and the opportunity comes up to manage your boyhood club. And he knows he's going to get into pelters because he knows fine well that he's not a Newcastle choice. That must have been so hard for him to decide what to do because he could never win. He's gone in from a club where I'm assuming the fans liked him and then all of a sudden now hate him and then went to Newcastle where the fans hated him.
I tell you what though, Craig, as daft as it sounds, given the way this season's gone, I'd take him back. And I know that sounds mental, and I can see people, watching this going, he said what? But, people forget that football's a business. And Katrien Mayer, who was at the club, referred to the supporters as customers. And we essentially are. I don't know, we get a big bee in our bonnet, but don't tell anybody. We actually are just customers. We don't have any real say in what goes off. But if Steve came back and brought the success back with him, I wouldn't give a shit. Do you know what I mean? We welcome back Ron Atkinson. Let's get Steve back as well. As long as we're winning games.
Ron Atkinson to go on an all-inclusive holiday to chuffing cricket, have we?
Yeah, well, but that was a personal thing, Anyway, sorry, Craig. Did Carol Baskin kill her husband septic tank?
Did what?
Have you seen Tiger King on Netflix?
I've not watched that yet. I've not got around to it.
I'll just put yes.
That's his next 4 questions knackered now.
That's it. Yeah.
Well, I'm out. Somebody else take over here. I'm going.
So I've got a question for you, Craig. Obviously, we've asked about the manager. Now, what about the player? The not the best player, but the player that you enjoy playing with the most. Might not have been the best player that you played, but it was like, because we know at Wednesday we've got Stephen Fletcher and Barry Bannon. They are friends. We know that on and off. But then yourself, is there like someone you really enjoy playing with and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because I played with some top players. I mean, Scott Gemmill was a really talented player. Probably went under the radar a lot more than anyone else because in today's game he wouldn't be a top player because it maybe not quick enough, not mobile enough, but unbelievable talent on the ball, just so comfortable, so calm. You could give him a ball under pressure anywhere on a football pitch and he wouldn't give it away. But I suppose the best player I enjoyed playing was Marcus Stewart, the striker who was at Huddersfield who went to Ipswich. Yeah. I think he was underrated. Unbelievable talent. Hang on 1 second. 1 sec.
I'm doing a podcast, love. I'm on internet.
I've just got internet.
Daughter, my eldest daughter.
You just send her away to walk the dog?
I tell her straight, get out. And she's like, what? Why?
Because Brian Clough said.
Yeah. No, so Marcus Stewart was underrated, scored goals. He's a good friend of mine anyway, but I just thought you could give him a ball on a football pitch and he'd look after it, he'd hold it up, he'd score goals he created. For me, he was he should have had an England cap at the time when he got promoted with Ipswich and did really well. I think he finished with 20 odd goals in the Premier League, but he obviously didn't. But listen, it's hard to say because there's so many talented players out there who I've been fortunate enough to play with and to play against, and you just, difficult question.
Sorry.
All right, forgive you.
So, just a bit about what you're doing now. Are you doing stuff with the FA, scouting and stuff?
I was scouting for the FA. I left 2.5 years. I'm working for Arsenal now.
Right.
So I'm doing a bit of scouting for Arsenal in the youth academy, which is it's a fantastic club with great history. What can I say? I'm very, very fortunate that I've had a football career, and I've lived, I suppose, everyone's dream, every man's dream, every woman's dream to play professional football, if that's what their dream was, and to still be involved in football now. I find myself very, very fortunate and very lucky because I'm out watching football all the time. I still see obviously Steve Haslam's academy manager at Sheffield Wednesday. I still see Steve a lot. I see Del at Sheffield United doing the 18s. Lee Bromby's at Huddersfield. So I still see the lads, and it's good to you don't realise that when you finish playing football. I think so we talk about mental health. I didn't realise at the time when I finished playing football that I would miss that buzz, and it probably hit me at a different time, and I didn't realise that I'd had difficulties until I got back into football and I look back at what happened and I'm thinking, oh my God, it just hits you so quickly when you leave the game. So I find myself very, very fortunate that I'm still involved and you guys invite us to the Red D Blues every now and again. So it's good.
Well, if I'd have had a better left back next to me instead of the little fella, I'd have been all right. You know what I mean? We could have marauded. We could have kept him in our pocket. Now, in terms of the scouting, Craig, if you're going to see Dronfield, Steve will probably be able to shout some players onto you. He's probably going to be your best mate after this, mate.
I was going to say, Craig, is there anyone that you've picked up for Arsenal or any names that you can say, I found him?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, again, when I worked for England, when I worked for England, the way we did it there was that I'd cover a certain area and would have other scouts in different areas. And the idea would be that I would go and watch an under-13 game on a Sunday and you flag up players that you like. And because obviously there's a you can't share data at younger age groups. So it was a lot easier for me because I was working for England. It didn't matter as much. So I could get the information on the player, feedback into the FA, and we'd put a name on the list. And then what would happen is if that player was then, say at Sheffield Wednesday, was now playing up at Middlesbrough on a Sunday, the North Scout would go and watch him and put a report on. So we end up collecting enough data so you can sort of have an overall view of what this player is doing and what he looks like. And you track him. I think the one that sort of I've been quite happy with is that the Uden Trophy, obviously he's played in Sheffield, and I remember Celtic played in, I think it was 4 years ago now, and Karamoko Dembele was playing at the time for Celtic.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
And Danny Williams, the ex-Chesterfield player, is a good friend of mine who's now an agent, actually looks after his older brother, but was looking after the family. And Danny said, Craig, you need to have a look at this boy born in London, you need to get him into England. And at the time, Karamoko's an 03 birthday, and international football runs from January to December. It doesn't run September to August like academy football does. So sometimes you might have an under 15 player in an under 16 age group as well as an under 16 player. So you can have that sort of diverse of a January born to a December born and a year apart. And what had happened is we had Kevin Betts, who used to play for Wickham and Bristol City and Fulham, was the England under 16 manager at the time, or 15s manager. And Betsy decided to call up, it was actually an 02 group, and Betsy decided to call up 2 or 3 03 players, which had never been done in the new sort of reshuffle at the FA. And I had to ring Kev up and say, Kev, you need to get Karamoko in. If you don't get him in, he'll go to Scotland. He'll play for Scotland. Get him in, have a look at him. So I sort of forced the hand a little bit, and they got him in. But that was obviously in the same age group as Jude Bellingham and a couple of boys like that. So that group is a talented group. So I wouldn't say that's me who did that, but by me forcing the issue, then more reports are put on him and more scouts watch him, and that's how you sort of all scouting works within football clubs.
That's
Does
even
that seem-
making
does
me
that
feel
seem weird?
all three.
Sorry, yeah, I know. Tell me about it.
Isn't it? They were born when you were playing for the Wendy.
Yeah, probably not very many games though, so we wouldn't have missed a lot.
And you were at Butlins, Dan.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
We're a red
You got any quick fire questions?
I've got my quick fires. Are you ready, Craig?
Go on then.
Who was your best mate at Sheffield Wednesday?
Not Dave Allen.
Richard Evans and Grant Holt
Yeah, it's going to be Evans. Who was the class clown?
at Wednesday.
Yeah.
Do you know? I don't know. Maybe Westy was a bit of a clown at times. Ash
Okay.
used to mess around.
Best moment at the club?
Signing for the club,
Worst moment?
probably not playing enough games at all.
So if you could go back to you now at 16, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself? About football, not just like...
Like you
What would I do? I'd work.
Invest in Apple.
I'd work. Yeah, I'd work a damn sight harder.
Cool. Who should have played at a higher level that you played with at Wednesday?
Leon Knight.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? Probably Leon. Leon should have been. Yeah, Leon should have been top.
Who are you still in contact with?
Still speak to Paul McLaren. Still speak to Dell, Steve Aslam, and Lee Bromby when I get a chance to. And still
Final
speak to
question.
Holt, to be fair.
Are you ready? How
Go
did
on.
it feel to walk out every Saturday afternoon dressed as a giant lollipop?
Yeah, chubby. Yeah, got you.
Is that not like one of the worst kits you've ever had to wear in your life?
No, you don't. Not about the kit. It's just about playing football. It was.
For us, it's
Yeah,
about the
great
kids,
atmosphere.
Craig.
Yeah. We have to spend 40 quid on it. I liked it. I liked it.
Blame the owner.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
it.
That's it. Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. Big round of applause again for Craig for coming on. Let's be class. Thank you. So we've got another guest lined up, I think, for next week. So
Are
same
you allowed
time.
to say who it is? Because I keep forgetting to do it before.
It depends if he lets us down, though. He's a busy guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but surely if we announce it, then he can't let us down.
I'm just gonna right. It's one of Paolo Di Canio, Benito Carboni, David Hurst, or it might be John Newsom. You know what I mean? Tune in next week.
Cheers, Craig, for calling.
No problem, guys.
Cheers, mate. Cheers.
Keep up to date with the Wednesday Week on Twitter at TWWcast or on our website, thewednesdayweek.co.uk.